Lucky enough to be chatting with Jack Reiss, the legendary referee. Jack, we know that you were the ref for Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury 1, and we have the rematch coming up, and I do want to talk about that. But before that, there was an interesting matchup and an interesting moment last Saturday night, and that was between Bryant Perrella and Abel Ramos. Now, before we even talk about that fight, I noticed you were also reffing the fight right before that one, right? So is that norm? Is that common that because I know refs do multiple fights in one night, but is it common for it to be back to back like that?
No, it's not. But this is what they needed. So of course, we just do whatever they need. They don't. I was very fortunate for them to ask me to come and do it, and if they had me do all three, I would have done all three.
So let's talk about Bryant Perrella versus Abel Ramos. So, uh, it, was there any? I know that you are a student of the game. I know that you do a lot of research and work. Did you think about Perella is going to maybe put a lot of volume together? Ramos maybe is a guy who's going to go for the knockout. Is anything like that in your mind at all?
Yes, for this fight, when I found out which fighters I was doing, I went to BoxRec, checked their records out, went to YouTube, watched them fight. The first fight I had with Magdaleno and Dule, I had a righty against a lefty, which sometimes creates a problem. Actually, all the time creates a problem. I'm sorry, two lefties, and on this one, I had a righty against a lefty. If I remember correctly, it was one way and one the other. So I'm looking for stuff like that because I know when it's a righty against the lefty, I'm going to keep a little bit further back than my normal distance because peripherally, I want to keep not only the upper part of their body and where the punches are landing, I want to be able to see their feet in case their feet get caught up and a punch at the same time, and the feet contribute to the knockdown. I'm going to call it a slip, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, in this case, Perella was the southpaw, Ramos the orthodox fighter.
I couldn't remember because
Yeah,
it happens.
and there's also, of course, it's common that there's can be headbutts in situations like that and things like that. So it makes sense that you are slightly more removed. So in that fight, it's going along, and Perella's doing his thing. He at in the 10th round, at one point, he was up 198 to 79 in punches landed by CompuBox. So what that means is he was outlanding his opponent by more than double. So it by most people watching, you would think that he was comfortably ahead. Now, I know that you told me that in California, there's times when they'll tell the referee the scorecard so that you can be more effective in terms of your position of deciding to stop a fight against, for someone who has no hope or no chance, and it might be the best thing in their interest to stop a fight. But this was in Nashville, so I'm guessing that you had no idea about the actual scorecards.
No, but I felt that Perella was comfortably ahead. He was outboxing Ramos at the time, although Ramos was giving his best and hitting Perella with some good shots as well. In fact, that evening, because I really didn't know the doctors or the commission or the timekeeper as well, I wanted everybody to be comfortable with me. I introduced myself, and every single round of the fights, I communicated with the doctor in between rounds to tell him what I was seeing because I didn't know his experience level. And I remember mentioning how the fight shifting. And I remember mentioning to him about the welt under the not laceration, abrasion, and a little bit of a contusion underneath Pearl's eye. And I remember, telling him earlier in the fight how Ramos, his nose was bleeding, possible broke it, maybe, maybe not.
And so the last round, like we said, Perella was doing his thing. There was about 30 seconds left to go in the last round. And at that point, I'm just curious, your mindset. Are you thinking about, okay, this fight is most likely going to go to a decision, and you're going to have to step in at the final bell, put your hands between the two guys. Had you started to mentally prepare for kind of the normal end of a fight type of scenario?
No, I knew it was the last round, and because I'm always keeping track of the rounds, and sometimes when I lose track of the rounds, I'm asking the timekeeper what round it is before I start the round, and I also like to do that to tell the fighters when I say to them, "Show me your mouthpiece, round 8." Show me, you know what I mean. And then the last round, I brought them out and had them touch gloves, So I knew it was the last round. But I think I've explained this to you before. In the championship fight, the championship rounds are when the things happen 9, 10, 11, 12. In a 10-round fight, 8, 9, and 10 is when the things are going to happen because the fighter who is behind, his corner is going to encourage him to step it up, and he's got to get moving. He's got to take the guy out, or he's got to win these next 3 rounds, and the action gets heated up a lot of times. So I'm just focused and concentrating on what's happening, and when I hear the 10-second warning, then I close the gap and get ready to stop the fight.
So in boxing, we know, especially in the championship rounds, it can be the theater of the unexpected, and that's why we love this sport, because extraordinary things always happen. So in the 10th round, we learned later, when I look at the scorecards, 2 of them were 88 to 83. One of them was 87 to 84 for Perrella. So Perrella, we know now, was comfortably ahead. With 30 seconds left in round 10, Ramos lands a left uppercut, and down goes Perrella. Take me through that moment from your perspective. Perrella popped right back up, and by the time you were counting, even by 3, he was already up. But tell me about that first knockdown in round 10 from your perspective.
So he got hit with a beautiful, I don't want to say I want to say devastating uppercut, because if you go back and look at it, you'll see it was an instantaneous and total loss of muscle control. His body language when he went down was totally wild. The blood flow or the electricity from his to his brain immediately shut off like a light switch, and he fell straight down. He went straight down. Please watch it again, you'll understand the quality of that knockdown. Tells me something different than a flash knockdown. The second thing that you mentioned, I was very surprised and not upset. I was concerned that he popped up real quick, because getting hit like that with a knockdown, fighters, good fighters, or which Perrella is a good fighter. So I thought maybe he wasn't taught this, or he was so out of it, he just did what was on instinct. When you get hit with a shot like that, good fighters take a knee, wait till wait till the 8 or 9 count, and slowly get up. Because at our age, you and me right now, we were down on the ground and we jumped up as fast as we can. Believe me, our blood pressure, our equilibrium would be off and we'd be dizzy. Can you imagine getting hit with a shot like that and then popping up? It's always better for a fighter on a really hard knockdown, take a knee, and then get up at 8 or 9.
It is.
So,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
and he popped up. And let me educate everybody. Curran, let me say this too. Man, I did not want that fight to end like that. That was the last thing in the world I've ever wanted to be involved with, a situation like that. But it happened, And when he went down like that, what I'm looking for is a referee. Number one, take your time, get up slow. Number two, what's he going to do after the knockdown? And what I want them to do, referees, what we want them to do, number one and number two, is run. Number two is hold, in that order, 1 and 2. And if everything after that is take a knee, spit out your mouthpiece, bob and weave, the last thing I want to see them do is stay put and fight back, because they're concussed. That's how they get knocked out. And when they stand still and fight back, it tells me they're on instinct. They can't run. They can't hold, because as a human, if you get hit and you're buzzing, you're hurt. The last thing you want to do is get hit. It's a normal reaction to want to put distance between you and the harm. So anyway, unfortunately, the second thing that Perrella did was he got up and he just put himself on the ropes, covered up, and started taking punches. And please look at this again. The punches that he threw back had 0 on them. They were arm punches and they were slow. So I was extremely concerned. And like I do in fights where a guy gets knocked down, especially if he gets knocked down hard, I close the gap. My distance was very close, and you can see in the films I was right on top of the action. By the way, when he got up the first time, there's something that I think I've given you the written language on it, the written policy on it. Let me go back and say, in the old days, we used to just say to the fighter after he got up, "You okay? All right, give me your gloves," and let him go. And 99 out of 100 times, they got knocked out. And the doctors, the ringside physicians have taught us, and now it's a policy from the commissions, not all of them, but New York, New Jersey, California, give them what we like to call a referee's sobriety test. Any drunk can stumble forward 2 or 3 steps, but a fighter who is concussed or a person who is drunk has trouble navigating their body when they have to turn. So the ringside physicians have taught us, and we've been doing it 2 or 3 years, a lot of us, that make the guy walk to his right or left, stop, turn, and come back to you, because it's going to be extremely difficult for that person if he's really hurt. So that's what I asked him to do, because that was a devastating knockdown. And when I made him walk to his left, he did it on shaky legs, but I believe that that moment he was at about 60%, 55 to 60% of his capacity. And that was enough to let me know he can intelligently defend himself. And I felt if Ramos didn't jump on him right away, he might be able to get back up to 70 or 80 and be in this fight. And if he held and stalled, he'd make it. And he deserved to, because he fought so well prior to that. So when I let him go, unfortunately, it was disappointing. He didn't have that in him. He stayed on the ropes and threw some really soft, slow shots, got hit with a couple of shots, and then when he took a step to move away, he got hit with a flush right hand that was a punch and a push at the same time. But he went flying back because he didn't have his balance, almost like, he was thrown, but he wasn't. It was just because he didn't have balance, which demonstrated to me he still wasn't good, and fell against the ropes. And then when he got up this time, I again assessed him. He was trying to respond to my questions. He was, shaking his head, which I asked him to do. And I told him, walk this way and then come back to me. And he wasn't in control of his body. He kept going. He was looking at me and he was trying to stop to turn back. And he actually stumbled and just kept going forward. To me, at that point, he was in no condition to intelligently defend himself. So if there was time left on the clock, there's no question I would have stopped that fight. And at that point, I couldn't, in my right conscience, turn around and rub his gloves and say box, because Ramos put him in that condition, and it would have been unfair to Ramos to take away the TKO. He earned that. He was in a condition there. He was no longer able to continue. I don't care how much time is on the clock. I had to do what was the right thing. Now, if Perrella would have stopped, even if he turned slowly and was able to follow my commands slowly and give me something to work with, I would have said, box, the bell would have rang, and we're done. But unfortunately, he was concussed. And I'm going to tell you something, Curran. I hope he would be kind enough to admit it, because he was a gentleman and a true professional. After the fight was over, and he goes, yeah, I was really hurt. I don't think he remembers anything that happened. That's how concussed he was. He probably don't remember a thing.
And it was a very difficult, interesting situation. Perrella went down, and like you said, in the past with Tyson Fury, you told him go that way and come back to me in the 12th round, and he did that, and he was able to intelligently defend himself. Right, so we've seen that referee's sobriety text work before successfully. In this case, at the end, you were aware of how much time is probably left in the fight. If he had kept walking but didn't stumble, let's say he didn't turn around back to you, but he kept walking but did not stumble, would you have let it continue there, or was it the fact that he stumbled?
The stumble contributed, but he wasn't responding to stop, come back to me. And you could hear me. I watched it finally, and I was imploring him, turn back to me, come back to me. And he didn't, because he couldn't. I'll try to describe this best I can, but after the stumble, his body wasn't erect. His feet were out in front of him, and he was kind of trying to hold up his body, and kept going to the corner. He was totally concussed. And let me say this, okay? After the first knockdown, if this was the NFL, NHL, Major League Baseball, basketball, and an athlete went down like that, they'd go into the concussion protocol. They'd bring out a stretcher, put a seat collar on him, and take him off the rink, the court, whatever. We have 8 to 12 seconds to assess if we can let him get more concussed. And it's people just don't understand. He wasn't going to get damaged after that, but the reason I stopped it was because Ramos earned the stoppage. I couldn't, again, in my conscience, with a guy I would never let continue, go box. Well, because I'm going to let the time run out because that's the right thing to do. It's not. How would Ramos's corner feel? What would they have been thinking?
And did you were obviously assessing him to see if he's okay to continue and to make the right call for his health, and his family watching. Did part of you say whatever I do in the next second, whether it be waving it off or letting it go, is actually going to determine the winner of this fight? Was that in your head at all?
No, absolutely not. What I did, what I instinctually do, and what I've trained myself to do, and that is in these situations, if the guy gives me anything to work with, I'm letting it continue, knowing he's not going to take any more punishment. Let me back up and make it easier, okay? The objective of boxing is to knock the shit out of your opponent and knock him out. Number one. Second one, if you can't knock him out, is to knock him senseless to where he can no longer intelligently defend himself and you force the referee to stop it. The third thing is if you can't do the first two, is to win round by round on points and win more rounds than the other guy. So Ramos did number two. He knocked him senseless to where the referee was going to be forced to stop the fight. I don't think anybody would argue with me if there was time left on the clock that I needed or didn't need to stop that fight. So my point is, Ramos did his job. He won. He deserved to win on a TKO.
So what I was going to say is that you can't be saved by the bell in any round. And so let's say he had gone down with, let's just say hypothetically, 2 seconds left in the round, and he pops up and you're giving him the count. As you're counting, the bell rings, right? What is the situation there?
The bell won't ring. Let me explain it to you. The rule says fighter cannot be saved by the bell in any round. And the reason it's like that is because after the 10-second warning is given, if there's a knockdown and you're in the middle of counting, the people who made the rules feel that the fighter, just because if he's on the ground and you're counting him out, you need to count him out because that guy put him in that spot. Count him out, fight's over. The guy who put him in that spot should win the fight. It would be ridiculous if during the legal course of a round, fighter A knocks down fighter B. Fighter B is out on his back, and you let the bell ring, and then I got to raise the guy's hand from the ground because he's now the winner on points. It's ridiculous. Think about it. So that's why the rule is in. If the punch came within the time frame, it's not over until the referee says box, or the guy recovers enough that you would let him box.
And
the timekeeper is not supposed to ring the bell until the referee's done with the assessment and says box, and that timekeeper will stop the time if it's going past at 2:59.
and that's what happened then here, because I took a stopwatch to the beginning of the round, and by the time you waved it off, it was actually at 3 minutes and 5 seconds. But to your point, that's because we're in that pause period, and if you wave it off, it counts as 2:59, right?
Yes, and if you think about it, at 3:05, okay, just like you're saying, is when I verified the condition he was in. 6 seconds, 8 seconds before that, he was in worse condition.
Right.
So there's no question about what you got to do.
And was there any part of you that as soon as he went down, were you thinking maybe I might wave this off?
No, because I wanted to give him every benefit of the doubt, and I think that, and I've been told, and I got to be honest with you, I've been called by quite a few referees and real boxing people, and just totally supportive, outstanding call, and that was the right thing to do, and all that stuff. But in this case, just like in a world championship fight with Fury and Wilder, I want to give a guy every single opportunity to get up and finish the fight. I always want it to come to a natural conclusion. Sometimes it doesn't. So to let everybody know what I'm seeing, I always like to get him up if possible and give him that referee sobriety test. Now, let me back up and say this. Guy's losing. It's a 10-round fight and he's lost 6 in a row and he gets dropped hard. I'm waving it off. Unless he's like this incredible puncher and really has a puncher's chance and he's been landing before, maybe I'll give him a chance. But if a guy doesn't have a mathematical chance to win, he doesn't have a puncher's chance, he's really fighting to survive, and we're past that point of no return, I'm waving it off. But that wasn't the case here. Perrella was certainly winning and in the fight and deserved the opportunity to be looked at.
No, and that makes sense. And you did that. We talked after the Gamboa fight versus Tank Davis, where there was no chance of Gamboa to win. Gamboa to win, and you waved it off when he went down. So that made sense.
When he's on the ground.
Yeah,
exactly. So, and let me say something too. Just if you could get a tape, of each stoppage, when I did Fury and when I did Gamboa and when I did Perrella, and just watch how they move after the knockdown. When I ask them to move, you'll see a distinct difference between Wilder and Perrella, because Wilder demonstrated he was in full control of his body. He actually did a little hop step and almost had a smile on his face. He was ready to go, where Perrella was Frankensteined. He was stiff and struggling to look at me and couldn't stop. And Gamboa had just taken so much damage prior to that. It was 3 knockdowns, I think it was at the time. There's no point.
And after you made that call, of course, boxing Twitter blew up, as it's one to do. And they talked about Julio Cesar Chavez versus Meldrick Taylor. In your mind, are there any similarities or comparisons between these two scenarios?
There's absolutely a comparison. Fortunately for me, in today's modern era, I had more tools to use than Richard Steele. And in those days, they got them up, they looked in their eyes, they said, "You okay?" And that was it. They wiped their gloves and that was it. Now I have an opportunity to make them walk, to make them talk to me. We're looking to find out their level of consciousness. And when we ask them a question, it's to know if they're alert and oriented to 3 things: person, place, and purpose. Who they are, where they are, and why are they there? And if they can answer those questions and then follow the commands, it will demonstrate their level of consciousness. And like I was saying, after the first knockdown, he was at about 55 or 60% Perrella. After the second knockdown, he was below 50%. And that's what I look for. Because below 50%, there's no way you could, my feeling is you can't intelligently defend yourself.
In the last round, we know what happened there with Perrella going down. You waved it off. Now, I've been talking a lot about fighters' safety. It's been pretty important for me, and I know for you as well. And part of what I think needs to change is the culture. And what I mean by that is fighters, when they're not fit to continue, they need to be okay with that. Trainers need to encourage that as well. One trainer that did not encourage that was Perrella's trainer. And so I wanted to ask you, what did he say to you in the corner? And the reason I'm asking is because if you let that fight continue, and let's say if there was time left, and Ramos comes in and lands a huge shot, Perrella's health is going to be in danger. His family is going to have to deal with that. So what was the trainer saying to you at that moment when you waved it off?
The trainer was screaming at me, "There's 3 seconds left. You stopped the fight with 3 seconds left." And like I tried to explain earlier, the clock doesn't matter. If one fighter renders the other fighter unconscious or not able to continue, the fight stopped. The fight's over. Whether there's 3 minutes left, 5 minutes left, 2 minutes left, or 1 second. That's the point that he didn't understand. What he was basically asking me to do was fudge those last 3 seconds, was let the fight go knowing that the guy would never be able to come running across the ring and hit him again because there wasn't that much time left on the clock. But that would have been cheating Ramos out of a legitimate TKO because he put him in that condition. And I would have never let anybody continue in the condition that Perrella was in after the first knockdown. In fact, he just barely got me to let him go because I felt he earned it after the first knockdown, because the body language on that knockdown and the way he got hit with that uppercut was an unbelievable shot. I give him credit for getting up. But yes, I agree. We got to change the culture. I understand why his trainer was so upset, and that's why I didn't react. I just I kept professional and didn't say anything at that point to him.
Certainly, and after the fight, Abel Ramos obviously was happy with the win. I think he brought up the Chavez-Meldrick Taylor comparison. Bryant Perrella, for his credit, did not choose to go down that route of saying anything like, trying to take the out of saying, you stopped it or anything like that. He seemed to be understanding at that moment. Was there any conversation between yourself and the fighters after the fight?
Yes, but let me tell you something. In my heart of hearts, this is what I believe. Okay, I've been in many fights growing up, and I've been in the ring more than I should have been, and I've been knocked out. And I got to tell you something. I don't remember anything after getting hit. I broke my jaw sparring, and I don't remember anything about after I got hit until I'm walking to my car. And I firmly believe the reason why Bryant didn't argue with me is because he didn't remember everything, and he knew he was out of it. He's honest with himself. You know what I'm saying? He knew he was hurt and he was out of it. And I got to tell you something too. I got to consider something you said. I gave him that chance to continue after that first knockdown. And if you don't think I'm concerned that his family, might be saying to me, why'd you even let him go after the first knockdown? That's a possibility too. But he's taking shots in the head, not the trainer.
No, 100%. And I think it's the trainer's job at that moment to kind of understand the stakes and the health situation and not react like that. And that's very interesting also about your theory on Perrella. I mean, we've seen fighters, there's times where fighters get completely knocked down and they don't even remember the knockdown happening, right? So it's very likely that that's possible. Yep. Mm-hmm. So the fight ends, they do their post-fight interviews. I know that you wanted to take a moment to look back at the end of the fight. You've obviously watched it, I'm sure now, maybe a few times. Has anything changed in terms of when you took a second to rewatch it, or is it the same feeling that you had after the fight?
It's stronger now, because to be very frank with you, when his trainer started yelling at me, I've never been reacted to that way. And that partly because, his trainer is not like a world-class trainer that has a lot of champions. I don't know how much experience he has, but, being frank with you, he's not like, an A-type trainer. And so, maybe he didn't understand. And the way he was speaking to me, the commission should have stopped him and stuff like that. But it gave me pause until I had to, until I looked at the fight. And I told his trainer, because he confronted me in the hotel as well, when we happened to cross past each other in the lobby, I told him, look, I am going to go home and put myself on check and watch this fight to see if there was something I could have done different or better. Until then, I did what I thought was right at the moment. And I told Brian the same thing. I said, Bryant, I am sorry the fight ended the way it did. I never want a fight to end like that. And I will go home and I will put myself on check and see if there's something better or different I could have done. And I was pleasantly surprised that I received so much support and phone calls from referees all over the country that I know, telling me what a great stoppage it was, which made me feel a little bit better. And then when I watched it, I said, yeah, he's out. I would never let him continue if there was time left on the clock. Ramos deserved the win. We're done.
And people who
one more thing.
Sorry,
that scenario is a perfect example of a couple of things. One, it can't be saved by the bell in any round. But number two, boxing people or non-boxing people that watch boxing are extremely critical on judges and referees. And I am here to attest to you that in person, it looked way worse than it did on TV. In fact, one of the guys from the studio came up to me and said, you know, Jack, this was in the dressing room afterward. He goes, we saw what you saw live, but the video doesn't show it. And I didn't realize till we got home because you couldn't see his whole body. They zoomed in on us.
Mm-hmm.
And you couldn't see everything. And the same thing when a guy's judging a fight. You can't see everything because the camera angles change. And if you go back to Wilder Fury,
Yep.
you'll see a camera change right before Wilder gets dropped in the 12th round.
Before Fury gets dropped.
Before Fury gets dropped in the 12th round.
Right.
The camera changed. And you miss a little bit. And I'm telling you, it's way different in person for judges, and in this case for referees as well, when you're ringside or you're in person than it is on television. I would love to see a camera mounted stationary somewhere that the fighters couldn't get hurt, but in the corner that you could see the entire ring from that camera, so you never eye level, so you never miss anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And after the fight, on the broadcast, people who know boxing, Joe Goosen, Brian Kenny, they all felt like you made the right decision. I felt like you made the right call. And so people who knew boxing knew that was the right call. I don't know if you ended up logging on to social media, Twitter, anything like that, to see people who maybe in their opinion thought it was not the right call. Did you see any negative reaction? Did you read anything like that?
Listen, like I said, I got a lot of support from my friends on it. And when they called, they said, are you okay? I said, I'm fine. Why? And they told me, they said, you're getting hammered on the internet. So I said, okay. And then, the people have sent me different things, and I've seen it overwhelmingly on all of the things that I've seen. The support for the stoppage was greater than the negativity that I shouldn't have.
And just looking back, it's funny that we're sitting here this week talking about this fight, right? Because it was a good fight, but we didn't think it was going to be noteworthy. Was it surprising to you that this fight kind of came out of nowhere in terms of being noteworthy for the way it ended?
Well, I think you're being very gentle and kind with me. It's controversial.
Right.
It's and the last thing I want to be is controversial. And it just seems lately that, the luck of the draw, I've been on some high-profile fights or highly televised fights that it didn't go. It wasn't black and white. It was gray, and I made something black and white out of that gray in an instant. And let me say this, too. I make mistakes. Everybody does. But we, as boxing officials, especially referees, have the hardest officiating job of anybody, and I'm going to tell you why. In every other sport, they have a team. In every other sport, when something happens, they call time, they huddle up together, and they decide what is fair and what is the best thing for that sport. We make a call, and we live with it. Done. In the moment, in the heat of battle. It's hard. I'm not complaining. No. I'm just explaining.
No, it's very difficult. It's one man, and the thing is, as one man or woman, and us as observers, we have it on our DVR. We can rewind and look back. They have replays. We can analyze. We can see other camera angles. When you're in there as the third man in the ring, and you have to make a split-second decision, I mean that's extremely difficult. And I think the fact that you were able to make the right decision without being, steered by, this is how it's going to affect the fight. You made the right decision in terms of fighter safety. I think that was definitely the right thing to do. So I know I've taken up a lot of your time, and I want to talk about Fury Wilder real quick. The last thing I wanted to ask.
May I just say one thing?
Yeah, please.
I want everybody to understand I didn't make the decision out of fighter safety that night.
Right.
I made it out of fairness. He was no longer able to. There's no way he was able to intelligently defend himself from that point on. And the clock, take the clock out of it. He was no longer able to do that, right? Put the clock in it, and I know he's not going to get hit again. It don't matter. The other guy deserved the win because he did this to him.
Right.
In fact, let's put it down to the most rudimentary terms imaginable. If this was two kids fighting in a schoolyard, which one would you rather be?
You'd rather be Ramos.
Hey, that's the point.
Yep.
That's the point. It's who would you rather be? And to your point, Ramos did what he had to do to win the fight.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you something else, Curran. I had street fights, and one street fight I had in shorts and a tank top in the middle of the summer in New York, my shoulders, elbows, and knees were bloody from rolling around on the asphalt with this guy, and I was kicking his ass. And guess what? Guess what? He nailed me. His head hit my nose. I don't remember hardly much after that. He won. I lost. I was doing great. He was doing great, but I didn't win.
Yep.
I'm just trying to tell you.
Yep.
No, and that makes sense. And so my last question on this whole situation before we move on, because I know we brought up Chavez versus Meldrick Taylor, and I know that obviously you said referees didn't have the same tools that they have now. I'm just curious, as an observer, when you look at that fight and the way that fight ended, what do you think about the way that fight ended? Do you think that was also the right call that Richard Steele made with 2 seconds to go to wave it off?
In that particular fight, at that particular time, the only difference was Richard Steele, there wasn't 2 knockdowns. He had 1, right? And Taylor got up in terrible condition. I don't think he was able to intelligently defend himself. He wasn't responding to Richard Steele. The deficit or detriment to Richard Steele was he didn't have any tools to sell the call. So no one realized, lots of people realized how bad of shape Meldrick Taylor was in, but Richard didn't have the tools in those days of answer my questions, walk to me, do things like that. So people were saying he made it to his feet. He made it to his feet. You can't stop the fight.
Right. That makes sense.
Well, it's not about making to your feet. It's about, is this guy ready to continue? Can he continue? So,
right.
Can he continue? And that brings me to Fury versus Wilder here, because as you know, I produced the Countdown show. You were featured on it. We talked a lot about the fight, and one of the biggest moments, probably in heavyweight history, was in that 12th round. Fury gets dropped. As he gets up, the words come right out of your mouth. You can hear it, and it says, you said, can you continue? And then when he said yes, you told him to walk to his side and come back to you, just like you told Perrella. But in this case, Fury was able to do that. So we are... He certainly did, and we are on the eve of that huge rematch. So let me ask you this. It's an interesting question for you, because you had the vantage point that really no one else on planet Earth had. You were the third man in the ring. Do you take any pride in the fact that you, by making the correct call in that fight, now we are all lucky enough to have this huge rematch? I mean, if you had waved it off, which would have been the incorrect decision there, you made the right call, and now we have a huge rematch. Do you take any pride in that?
What do you think?
I would say yes.
Let me just tell you something.
Yes.
If it's this simple, okay? There was a professional sportscaster today, which I'm shocked, said I robbed Wilder of a victory because I picked up the count late and my count was whatever, right? It's stealing from a wonderful moment. That's number one, because that guy is 100% incorrect. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And that was a great moment in boxing history that I just happened to be part of. And now this is the best. These guys are making a hell of a lot more money. The fans are going to get a great fight. So yeah, I'm happy I was part of it, but I'm happy I was part of it because I believe in my heart of hearts I made the right decision. And you know how I know that? 2 ways. Number one, the way Fury responded after that devastating knockdown. He ran, he held, he survived the next 30 seconds, and then he came back. And the rest of the round after that 30 seconds, I'm not saying he won the round, but he won that portion of it after the knockdown. That's number one. Now, because if he would have got up and got knocked out, Curran, I wouldn't be a very popular person. I probably wouldn't even be working anymore. People would, they would have been chastising me. And the second reason I know what I did was right was the promoters want me on the fights. The commission is still using me on the fights. If I had made the wrong decision and I was impatient and I just waved it off, maybe not.
And right, 100%, and that makes sense. So you were the third man in the ring. You had a vantage point that no one else on planet Earth had. I don't want to necessarily say you have to, of course, make a pick, but if you were to just kind of handicap it for us and say, based on what you saw and that unique vantage point, do you have a sense of how you think this rematch is going to play out?
I don't know how it's going to play out, but I have to tell you, it's even bigger than the first fight. It's more exciting than the first fight for a few reasons. Number one, Wilder went into the first fight coming off a broken hand. He was hardly using it in his fights before that, and I heard he didn't even use it in sparring before the Fury fight. That hand has now been healed, and it's proven it's healed because he knocked two guys out in devastating fashion since that fight. Second thing is Wilder has admitted he got caught up in the moment and he got emotional and he just wanted to knock this guy out. He might come in with a little bit more of a controlled game plan. The other side of it is Fury came into that fight after losing 100 pounds, having a mental breakdown, and you didn't know, and no fights. You didn't even know what kind of condition he was going to be in, and he demonstrated that he can carry a 256-pound, 6'9" frame and bob and weave and move for 12 rounds. Unbelievable that a guy could do that at that weight. So this fight, and he's had two fights since then, and he's been maintaining the weight, although I am a little concerned that he's 15 pounds heavier for this fight, but he's been maintaining a decent fighting weight for him. So now we got two better versions of both guys. Both guys know what to expect from each other. I would imagine they've changed little things here and there to assist them in beating the opponent that they had last time. I just see it nothing but more exciting, more interesting. And it's who's going to make that mistake first? Who's going to let his guard down first? And, people think that, people say that Fury don't have a chance to knock him out. That's a 6'9", 270-pound, 270-pound man. Believe me, he can knock somebody out, especially with fatigue as part of it. And Wilder, we all see what that right hand, when it's healthy, can do. This fight's going to be bigger, better, and I can't wait to watch it.
And in this fight on February 22nd, the referee is Kenny Bayless, who's also a fantastic referee as well. Do you look at that and say, man, I wish I was in there refereeing this fight because it's such a big event? Or do you say, hey, good luck, because it's obviously tough when you have these two giant men and the stakes are so high? What is your view on that? I
absolutely would have loved to have done this rematch. Any referee who tells you different is a liar. The other side of it is, hey, I understand you can't get every fight, and I love Kenny like a brother, and he's a fantastic referee, one of the best in the world, and I know he's going to do a fantastic job like he always has done in the past. He's so experienced and so calm in there. He's going to do a great job.
And just to close it out, this huge mega fight, tell me the Jack Reiss plan for watching it. Where are you going to be? What's the plan? How are you going to enjoy this big event?
I have a close friend and his wife. They're close friends of my wife and I. And I've been invited to a bunch of different places to come watch the fight, and I was also going to do it at my own house. But my close friend, who has like an 85-inch TV with the craziest sound, his profession, he owned a sound studio, and he used to change movies from English to Spanish, top movies, everything you can imagine, to whatever. So he's very into that kind of equipment. His TV is unbelievable, and he promised me no one else is coming over except the four of us, so I can watch it and concentrate without people yelling and asking stupid questions, and I could just watch it and enjoy the fight.
Well, I hope you enjoy it. You've certainly deserve it. You've earned it from your great work, and not just recently, but for a long time as the third man in the ring. I want to thank you so much for breaking it down and for giving us that insight. As boxing fans, we don't get this insight anywhere else of hearing what it's like in your head when you have to make these tough split-second decisions. So I want to thank you so much for the time.
You're very welcome, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to get my side out there, as well as I believe this is educational for the boxing fans, whether they're a new fan or they've been around for a long time, to hear this perspective and give them something to consider moving forward. And I just wish it wasn't me that was in the controversies when you're interviewing me. So if you want to interview me again when it's somebody else, please do.